In a world obsessed with specialization, many of us quietly wrestle with a hidden frustration. The struggle to cultivate and master our multiple passions without feeling scattered, overwhelmed, or guilty. We chase inspiration from one interest to another, excited by potential, yet haunted by unfinished projects and unrealized ambitions. What if there were another way? A structured path toward harnessing the power of your varied interests rather than being derailed by them. Leonardo da Vinci, the quintessential Renaissance polymath, didn't suffer from scattered focus. He thrived precisely because he had a method for systematically transforming his diverse curiosities into deep, enduring mastery. In this book, I'll reveal that method, distilled into 7 powerful principles, and show you how to apply them directly to your life. Inside, master multiple interests, think like Leonardo da Vinci. You'll discover how to replace randomness and chaos with cadence and clarity. You'll learn how Da Vinci leveraged curiosity strategically, transformed ideas into actionable evidence, and developed an extraordinary perception to see patterns others missed. Through structured experimentation and disciplined questioning, you'll gain the tools to move confidently from inspiration to completion. Whether you're a multi-passionate creator, an ambitious professional juggling diverse roles, or simply someone driven by insatiable curiosity, this book offers you a proven framework to reclaim your time, restore your focus, and finish what you start. It's time to turn overwhelm into strategic mastery. Your inner Renaissance genius is waiting. Let's get started. Chapter 1. Beat randomness. Your desk is a crime scene. 3 half-finished projects sprawl across your workspace like abandoned dreams. The design mock-up from Tuesday sits next to code snippets from last week, while your business plan draft glares at you from beneath a stack of research notes. Each represents hours of genuine effort, yet none feels close to done. Sound familiar? You're not lazy. You're not unfocused. You're paying the hidden tax of randomness, and it's bankrupting your potential. This chapter will show you how Leonardo da Vinci turned scattered curiosity into systematic genius, and how you can do the same. You'll learn to replace chaos with cadence, transforming your breadth of interests from a liability into your greatest competitive advantage. The three-headed monster. Randomness doesn't attack directly. It's subtler, more insidious. It kills through 3 forces that most multi-passionate creators never see coming. Attention splinter hits first. You spread yourself across too many simultaneous projects, giving each 10 to 20% effort when breakthrough requires 80%. Your output feels busy yet shallow. Every project gets some love, but none gets enough to cross the finish line. Confidence erodes with each stall. Context switch tax follows close behind. Every time you jump between projects, you burn precious minutes reloading mental context. What was I thinking here? Where did I leave off? What was the next step? Flow becomes rare. Deep work gets crowded out by transitions. Decision fatigue spikes as you negotiate with yourself all day about what deserves attention. Guilt spiral delivers the killing blow. Working on Project A feels like cheating on Project B. Joy turns into pressure. You chase novelty to escape guilt, abandoning projects midstream. Your identity shifts from finisher to dabbler, making it easier to quit next time. This isn't a character flaw, it's a systems problem. The compound catastrophe. Left unchecked, randomness creates a devastating compound effect. Skills decay because you constantly refactor basics instead of advancing. Confidence dips. Goals shrink to match inconsistent output. You conclude, I'm not consistent, and that belief becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. Your hard drive fills with draft graveyards that breed shame. You stop sharing altogether. Reputation stalls because no one sees your best thinking. Collaborators avoid the risk of working with someone who might pivot mid-project. Doors close. Worst of all, you mistake motion for progress. You're overcommitted yet under-recovered, quitting the wrong things at the wrong times. Relationships strain under last-minute pivots. You're burning out while staying stuck, the cruelest irony of all. The Da Vincian alternative. But there's another path. Leonardo da Vinci faced the same challenge 500 years ago. His notebooks reveal interests spanning anatomy, engineering, painting, architecture, music, and mathematics. Yet instead of scattering, he created a system that turned breadth into breakthrough. Da Vinci's secret wasn't choosing one lane. It was building a hierarchy of ideas arranged in deliberate cycles. He used 7 principles that transformed curiosity into capability. Curiosità selected direction through disciplined questioning. Dimostrazione converted ideas into evidence through small experiments. Sensazione upgraded inputs through trained perception. Sfumato preserved options while timing decisions perfectly. Arte Scienza fused intuition with rigor through mechanism mapping. Corporalità engaged the body as a thinking partner. Connessione multiplied results by linking disciplines. This wasn't random exploration, it was structured discovery. The flywheel effect. When you master this sequence, something magical happens. Each principle feeds the next. Curiosity selects experiments. Experiments sharpen perception. Perception reveals patterns. Patterns inform models. Models guide decisions. Decisions create artifacts. Artifacts attract opportunities. You stop reacting to whatever screams loudest. You rotate by design, not impulse. Progress compounds instead of fragmenting. Your reputation shifts from scattered to systematic. People start seeking you out for the unique blend only you can provide. Consider Benjamin Franklin. His notebooks reveal the same systematic approach: experiments with electricity, innovations in printing, civic improvements, diplomatic strategies. Each domain informed the others. His structured curiosity built multi-domain influence that shaped a nation. Or Steve Jobs, who connected calligraphy to typography to interface design. That cross-domain transfer became Apple's competitive moat. His signature synthesis emerged from systematic connection, not random dabbling. The winner's playbook. Winners follow a different pattern than losers, and the difference is stark. Winners plan weekly, test small, finish often. They measure integrity, sessions planned versus sessions kept. They share their process, invite critique, and iterate fast. Their notebooks become laboratories. Their calendars become promises. Their output becomes a flywheel. Losers plan daily, think big, finish never. They hide drafts, wait for perfect conditions, and blame time constraints. They switch projects at the first plateau. Their desks become graveyards. Their calendars become suggestions. Their output becomes a treadmill. The scorecard challenge is simple. Keep a 14-day integrity log. Track sessions planned versus sessions kept. If you're below 80%, cut lanes until you can keep your promises. If you're above 90%, raise the bar. Decide like a professional. Act like a finisher. Your 30-day launch sequence. By the end of this book, you'll have 3 concrete assets that transform how you work. A 30-day Da Vincian plan starts with picking 1 keystone problem and 3 Curiosità questions. You'll log 4 Dimostrazione micro-experiments with sketches and results. You'll ship 1 hybrid artifact publicly, small, done, visible. A working codex gives you 1 notebook structure with titles, tags, and cross-references. You'll establish a weekly review ritual and maintain a next action index per project. Your notes become a searchable trail you can trust. A noticing habit includes a daily 10-minute Sensazione drill covering sight, sound, and touch. You'll complete 1 perspective stack per week on a Curiosità question. Pattern recognition accelerates. Blind spots shrink. The 7-step sequence. The order matters. Each step builds on the last. Curiosità maps your questions by leverage, feasibility, and resonance. You cap active questions at 3 and park the rest. You design 1 observation drill per question. Dimostrazione turns ideas into evidence. You state 1-line hypotheses, sketch mechanisms, and test the smallest slice in 48 hours. You log evidence and publish tiny artifacts. Sensazione trains perception through daily noticing drills and cross-modal translations. You run weekly perspective stacking sessions and build a vocabulary for what you see. Sfumato helps you hold ambiguity without stalling. You create 2-track plans with decision windows, use contrast grids for trade-offs, and practice scale flips between micro and macro views. Arte Scienza models mechanisms through idea dissection and systems sketching. You create 1-page mechanism maps, test predictions, and iterate until the model predicts accurately. Corporalità engages your body as a thinking partner. You schedule kinetic resets, create handmade mock-ups, and use tool play to learn through making. Connessione links disciplines through lattice maps and bridge drills. You ship monthly hybrids and build your signature framework. This sequence creates anti-randomness architecture. Rituals replace moods. Systems replace willpower. You earn momentum, and momentum lowers effort. The flywheel keeps spinning when motivation dips. The transformation ahead. What you're about to learn isn't just productivity advice. It's a complete operating system upgrade. You'll move from scattered to systematic, from reactive to proactive, from dabbler to finisher. Your relationships will improve as you become more predictable and present. Your work will compound as transfer effects multiply your learning speed. Your opportunities will expand as your signature style emerges. The path ahead requires discipline, but it rewards you with freedom. Freedom from guilt, freedom from chaos, freedom to pursue multiple interests without sacrificing depth. Leonardo's notebooks didn't just record his thoughts, they amplified them. His system turned curiosity into capability, breadth into breakthrough, interest into influence. Your transformation starts with a simple choice. Will you continue paying the randomness tax, or will you build the system that sets you free? The next chapter reveals how Curiosità transforms scattered interest into disciplined wonder. But first you must decide, are you ready to beat randomness once and for all? Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, Curiosità. Richard Feynman kept a notebook with 12 problems written on the first page. Not 100, not 50, 12. He called them his favorite problems, and for decades, whenever he encountered a new technique, tool, or insight, he'd test it against these same 12 questions. This wasn't laziness or lack of imagination. Feynman understood something most curious minds miss: the difference between curiosity and curiosità. One scatters your attention across 1,000 shiny objects. The other transforms scattered interest into disciplined wonder that compounds over time. You're about to discover why Leonardo da Vinci's approach to curiosity was radically different from the random clicking that passes for exploration today. More importantly, you'll learn to build your own Curiosità system, one that turns vague interests into focused inquiry that pulls you toward meaningful work. The curiosity trap. Most people treat curiosity like a buffet. They sample everything, commit to nothing, and leave feeling simultaneously full and unsatisfied. They follow every spark, chase every trend, and wonder why their interests never deepen into expertise. This approach feels productive. You're learning, exploring, discovering. But you're also diluting your attention across too many fronts. Sparks need ranking to become fire. Without selection criteria, curiosity becomes a distraction engine instead of a direction finder. The myth of follow your passion makes this worse. It suggests that authentic interests arrive fully formed, complete with clear next steps and obvious applications. In reality, big ideas arrive half-baked. You finish them through sustained inquiry, not initial enthusiasm. Consider how many passionate interests you've abandoned after the novelty wore off. The problem wasn't lack of passion, it was lack of structure. Passion without process leads to hobby hopping. Process without passion leads to drudgery. But passion with process, that's where breakthroughs live. The Leonardo method. Leonardo da Vinci faced the same challenge you do. Too many fascinating questions, too little time. His notebooks reveal interests spanning anatomy, engineering, painting, architecture, music, mathematics, and natural philosophy. Yet instead of scattering, he developed recurring obsessions that he revisited with new methods and angles throughout his life. Water fascinated him for decades. He studied its flow patterns, designed canals, painted its movement, and used hydraulic principles in his engineering. Flight captivated him from multiple angles. bird anatomy, wing mechanics, air currents, and machine design. Anatomy drove investigations that informed both his art and his understanding of natural systems. Leonardo didn't abandon old questions when new ones appeared. He maintained what we might call a gradient, a ranking system that kept him returning to high-leverage inquiries while allowing space for exploration. This gradient prevented him from chasing every interesting observation while ensuring his deepest questions received sustained attention. The key insight: Leonardo treated curiosity as a selection algorithm, not a collection hobby. The three-dimensional question. Not all questions are created equal. Some lead to dead ends. Others open entire fields of inquiry. The difference lies in three dimensions that separate powerful questions from mere wondering. Leverage determines how much a question transfers across domains. How do complex systems maintain stability applies to ecosystems, organizations, relationships, and economies. What makes this specific app interface confusing applies to one interface. High-leverage questions multiply your learning investment. Feasibility measures whether you can make meaningful progress within reasonable time constraints. How does consciousness emerge from neural activity is fascinating, but might require decades of neuroscience research. What patterns make some explanations more memorable than others can be explored through daily observation and simple experiments. Resonance captures your genuine, sustained interest in the question, not the fleeting excitement of novelty, but the deeper pull that survives initial enthusiasm. Questions with high resonance keep drawing you back, even when progress feels slow. The magic happens when you find questions that score high on all three dimensions. These become your favorite problems, the inquiries that deserve sustained attention and systematic exploration. Building your gradient. The Curiosità gradient starts with a brain dump. Set a timer for 5 minutes and write down every question that genuinely interests you. Don't filter, don't organize. Just capture the raw material of your curiosity. You'll probably generate 25 to 50 questions. This is normal. The goal isn't to find the perfect question immediately, it's to see the full landscape of your interests so you can make informed choices about where to focus. Next comes the scoring phase. Rate each question on the three dimensions using a simple 1 to 5 scale. Leverage. How much does this transfer across domains? Feasibility. Can I make meaningful progress in the next few months? Resonance. Does this question still interest me when I imagine working on it for 6 months? Add up the scores. The highest scoring questions become your top 3. Everything else goes into a backlog, not deleted, just parked. This isn't about killing curiosity, it's about channeling it. Give your top 3 questions short, memorable names: the explanation problem, the attention question, the transfer mystery. These labels will appear in your notes, files, and calendar. Consistency compounds clarity. Daily observation calisthenics. Questions without observation remain abstract. Observation without questions becomes aimless. The bridge between them is what Leonardo practiced daily: systematic noticing linked to specific inquiries. For each of your top 3 questions, design a simple daily observation prompt. If you're exploring what makes some explanations stick while others slide off, your prompt might be, notice one explanation today. What made it clear or confusing? The format is deliberately simple: 10 minutes of focused noticing, captured in 3 lines. Saw records the observation. Wonder captures what it makes you curious about. Next, identifies one small action or experiment the observation suggests. This isn't journaling for therapy. It's data collection for discovery. You're training your attention to notice patterns relevant to your questions while building a searchable database of insights. The key is linking observation to inquiry. Random noticing generates random insights. Directed noticing generates directed insights. Your questions become filters that help you see what matters while ignoring what doesn't. The power of perspective stacking. Great questions reveal different truths at different scales. What creates lasting behavior change looks different from a neuroscience perspective than from a social psychology perspective. It looks different at the individual level than at the community level. Perspective stacking forces you to examine your questions through multiple lenses systematically. Draw 3 boxes labeled micro, meso, and macro. Fill each with one observation, one risk, and one opportunity related to your question. For the behavior change question, micro might focus on individual habits and triggers. Meso might examine social influences and group dynamics. Macro might consider cultural forces and systemic incentives. Each perspective reveals different leverage points and blind spots. You can also rotate through role-based lenses: user, operator, investor, scientist, artist. How would each viewpoint change your understanding of the question? What would each prioritize? What would each ignore? This is an academic exercise. Different perspectives suggest different experiments, different metrics, and different applications. Stacking perspectives prevents tunnel vision while revealing the full dimensionality of your inquiry. The Feynman filter. Richard Feynman had a brutal test for his favorite problems. Any new technique or insight had to prove its worth against his core questions. If a concept couldn't illuminate at least one of his 12 problems, he'd set it aside. This filter prevented intellectual hoarding while ensuring every new learning connected to his deeper inquiries. You need a similar filter. When you encounter an interesting article, technique, or opportunity, ask, how does this connect to my top 3 questions? If the connection is weak or forced, park it in your backlog. If the connection is strong, capture how it advances your understanding. This filter feels restrictive at first. You'll worry about missing important insights or opportunities, but restriction creates focus, and focus creates depth. You'll learn more about your chosen questions than you would by sampling everything superficially. The filter also reveals when it's time to rotate questions. If you consistently find yourself forcing connections, your interests may have genuinely shifted. That's fine. Just make the change deliberately, not impulsively. Pattern triangulation. Individual observations can mislead. Patterns across multiple contexts reveal truth. When you notice something interesting related to your question, ask, where else have I seen this pattern? What makes this recur across different domains? Pattern triangulation requires seeing the same dynamic in at least 3 different contexts before treating it as significant. This prevents you from building theories on isolated incidents while helping you identify genuinely transferable insights. If you're exploring attention patterns, you might notice that interruptions fragment focus in your work, in conversations, and in learning new skills. The pattern triangulates. Interruptions consistently degrade performance across cognitive domains. This suggests experiments worth running and principles worth testing. Triangulation also works across time. Does the pattern hold across different seasons, moods, or life circumstances? Robust patterns survive contextual changes. Fragile patterns disappear when conditions shift. The question evolution. Your questions will evolve as you explore them. This is healthy, not a sign of inconsistency. Good questions sharpen with investigation. Vague wonderings become specific hypotheses. Broad curiosities narrow into testable propositions. How do people learn might evolve into what makes explanations memorable, which might further evolve into how does visual structure affect comprehension. Each iteration becomes more specific, more testable, and more actionable. Track this evolution in your notes. When a question shifts, write down what triggered the change and how the new version differs from the old. This creates a learning trail that reveals how your understanding deepens over time. Sometimes questions merge, sometimes they split, sometimes they reveal themselves as symptoms of deeper questions. All of this is normal. The goal isn't to find the perfect question immediately, it's to follow the inquiry wherever it leads while maintaining systematic progress. The collaboration magnet. Sharp questions attract sharp people. When you can articulate a specific, compelling inquiry, experts in related fields take notice. They offer insights, suggest resources, and sometimes propose collaborations. Vague interests repel collaboration. I'm interested in creativity generates polite nods. I'm exploring how constraint shapes creative output generates conversations. Specificity signals serious inquiry, which attracts serious responses. Share your questions publicly. Write about them, tweet about them, mention them in conversations. You'll be surprised how often someone responds with a relevant insight, resource, or connection. Your questions become magnets for serendipity. This sharing also creates accountability. When others know what you're exploring, you're more likely to make consistent progress. Public curiosity becomes public commitment. The backlog discipline. The hardest part of the Curiosità system isn't choosing your top 3 questions. It's resisting the urge to promote every interesting observation into active investigation. Your backlog will grow. New questions will emerge. Shiny objects will beckon. Resist. Review your backlog monthly, not daily. Promote questions only when you have evidence that they deserve active attention, either because they've proven more important than expected or because one of your current questions has reached a natural conclusion. This discipline feels artificial at first. Your brain will generate reasons why the new question is obviously more important than your current ones. Recognize this as the novelty bias talking. New feels important because it's new, not because it's actually more valuable. The backlog isn't a graveyard, it's a garden. Questions that matter will keep surfacing. Questions that don't will fade naturally. Trust the process. The compound effect. After a month of systematic Curiosità practice, something shifts. Your questions begin generating their own momentum. Observations connect across days and weeks. Patterns emerge from noise. Small insights compound into larger understanding. Your notes become a searchable database of insights rather than a random collection of thoughts. Your conversations become more focused and productive. Your projects align with your deeper interests instead of fighting against them. Most importantly, you develop what Feynman called prepared mind, the ability to recognize significant observations when they appear. Because you've been systematically exploring specific questions, you notice things others miss. Serendipity becomes systematic. This is the true power of Curiosità. It transforms random curiosity into directed discovery. You stop being a passive consumer of interesting information and become an active investigator of meaningful questions. But questions alone aren't enough. Even the sharpest inquiry remains abstract until you test it against reality. The next chapter reveals how Dimostrazione transforms your carefully chosen questions into evidence you can trust, though the method Leonardo used might surprise you. Chapter 8. It's a fall. Benjamin Franklin stood in a field during a thunderstorm, flying a kite with a metal key attached to the string. To most observers, this looked like madness. To Franklin, it was Tuesday. What separated Franklin from the armchair philosophers of his era wasn't superior intelligence, it was his obsession with turning ideas into evidence. While others debated the nature of electricity in coffee houses, Franklin was outside getting shocked by it. His notebook didn't just contain theories, it contained test results, failed experiments, and the kind of proof that changes minds and builds nations. This is Dimostrazione, Leonardo's principle of learning through demonstration. But it's not what most people think. It's not about grand experiments or expensive equipment. It's about treating every idea as a hypothesis that deserves a fair trial, and your notebook as the courtroom where evidence decides the verdict. The debate trap. Most learning happens through consumption and conversation. You read articles, attend lectures, discuss ideas with colleagues. This feels productive, but it's largely passive. You're processing other people's evidence, not creating your own. The problem with secondhand evidence is that it never quite fits your specific situation. The case study was conducted in a different industry. The research used different metrics. The success story involved different constraints. You're left guessing whether the principle applies to your context. Debate makes this worse. When you encounter conflicting opinions, you naturally gravitate toward the one that confirms your existing beliefs. You cherry-pick evidence that supports your position while dismissing contradictory data. The loudest voice wins, not the most accurate one. Franklin understood that evidence beats opinion every time. When he wanted to understand electricity, he didn't just read about it, he experimented with it. When he designed a more efficient stove, he didn't just theorize about heat transfer. He built prototypes and measured their performance. His reputation for accuracy came from his commitment to testing his own ideas. This is the essence of Dimostrazione. You become your own primary source. The speed advantage. The fastest way to learn isn't through perfect planning, it's through rapid iteration. Small tests generate fast signals that inform better decisions. Slow, perfect plans go stale while you're still researching. Consider how long most people spend getting ready to test an idea. They research best practices, gather resources, plan contingencies, and design elaborate experiments. By the time they're ready to start, their initial enthusiasm has faded and their assumptions have calcified. Leonardo took the opposite approach. His notebooks reveal hundreds of quick sketches, rough prototypes, and simple tests. He'd draw a flying machine concept in the morning and build a small model by afternoon. If it failed, he'd sketch a variation and try again. If it showed promise, he'd invest more time in refinement. This rapid iteration created a feedback loop that accelerated learning. Each test revealed new questions, which suggested new tests, which generated new insights. The speed itself became a competitive advantage. Modern software developers understand this principle. They ship minimum viable products, gather user feedback, and iterate quickly. They've learned that customer behavior reveals more than customer surveys, and real usage patterns matter more than focus group opinions. Your ideas deserve the same treatment. Test them while they're still rough. Learn from reality, not speculation. The laboratory mindset. Most people treat their notebooks as storage devices, places to capture thoughts, quotes, and meeting notes. But Leonardo treated his notebooks as laboratories where ideas went to be tested, refined, and proven. This shift in perspective changes everything. Instead of writing, "I think X might work," you write, "Hypothesis, X will produce Y under condition Z." Instead of collecting interesting quotes, you design experiments to test whether the quoted principles actually apply to your situation. Your notebook becomes a scientific instrument, not just a memory aid. Each page documents an investigation, not just an observation. Over time, you build a searchable database of evidence rather than a random collection of thoughts. The key is structure. Leonardo used consistent formats that made his experiments easy to review and compare. He'd state his hypothesis clearly, describe his setup, record his observations, and note what he learned. This consistency allowed him to spot patterns across different investigations and build cumulative knowledge. You need the same discipline. When you test an idea, use standard headers that force clarity. Hypothesis describes what you expect to happen. Setup explains how you'll test it. Data records what actually happened. Learn captures what the results mean. Next identifies the obvious follow-up experiment. This structure prevents the most common experimental failures. Vague hypotheses that can't be proven wrong, sloppy execution that contaminates results, and poor documentation that makes learning impossible to retrieve later. Visual hypothesis testing. Before you test an idea, draw it. This simple step eliminates more confusion than any amount of verbal explanation. When you're forced to sketch the mechanism you're testing, hidden assumptions become visible and missing pieces reveal themselves. Leonardo's notebooks are filled with diagrams that preceded his experiments. He'd draw water flowing around obstacles before testing different channel designs. He'd sketch gear ratios before building mechanical prototypes. He'd diagram wing structures before constructing flying machines. These weren't artistic exercises, they were thinking tools. The act of drawing forced him to be specific about how he thought things worked. Vague concepts like improved efficiency became concrete mechanisms with measurable inputs and outputs. Your sketches don't need to be beautiful, they need to be clear. Use boxes to represent components, arrows to show relationships, and question marks to highlight uncertainties. If you can't draw your hypothesis, you probably don't understand it well enough to test it effectively. The visual approach also makes it easier to share your thinking with others. A simple diagram communicates complex relationships faster than paragraphs of explanation. When you're ready to get feedback on your experiment design, a sketch is worth 1,000 words. The smallest possible test. The biggest mistake in experimental thinking is designing tests that are too big. You want to prove your entire theory in one grand experiment. This leads to complex setups, long timelines, and results that are impossible to interpret. Leonardo understood the power of minimal tests. When investigating water flow, he didn't build a full-scale canal. He watched water move around pebbles in a stream. When studying bird flight, he didn't attempt to build a human-sized flying machine. He observed how feathers behaved in wind currents. Each small test answered one specific question. The results either supported his hypothesis or suggested a modification. Either way, he learned something useful in a short time frame with minimal resources. Your tests should follow the same principle. If you're exploring whether visual explanations improve comprehension, don't design a month-long course. Create 2 versions of a single concept explanation and test them with 5 people. If you're investigating whether certain meeting structures increase participation, don't redesign your entire meeting culture. Try one modification in your next team check-in. The goal is to get signal, not perfection. Small tests generate fast feedback that informs bigger decisions. They also reduce the emotional investment that makes it hard to abandon bad ideas. Set a 90-minute time limit for your initial tests. This constraint forces you to focus on the essential question while preventing perfectionist paralysis. You can always run a more elaborate follow-up if the initial results are promising. The Codex Method. Your experiments are only as valuable as your ability to find and apply their lessons later. This requires a systematic approach to documentation that turns scattered tests into cumulative knowledge. Leonardo developed what we might call the Codex Method, a consistent approach to organizing and cross-referencing his investigations. Each experiment received a clear title that made its purpose obvious. Related experiments were tagged with common themes. Cross-references connected insights across different domains. This wasn't busy work, it was knowledge architecture. When Leonardo encountered a new problem, he could quickly scan his previous work for relevant insights. When he discovered a new principle, he could identify all the places it might apply. His notebook became a searchable brain that amplified his thinking. You need the same system. Give each test a descriptive title that includes the key variable you're testing. Email subject line clarity test is better than test 3 because it immediately tells you what you were investigating. Use consistent tags that group related experiments. Attention, explanation, and motivation might be useful categories for someone exploring learning effectiveness. Add "See Also" references at the bottom of each experiment log. When you notice connections to previous tests, note them explicitly. These cross-references create serendipitous discoveries when you're reviewing old work. The goal is to build a legacy codex, a body of personal research that becomes more valuable over time. Each new experiment adds to your understanding while connecting to previous insights. Your notebook evolves from a collection of isolated tests into an integrated knowledge system. The publication principle. The fastest way to improve your experimental thinking is to share your results publicly. This creates accountability that prevents sloppy methodology while attracting feedback that improves your approach. Start small. Share a single image and one paragraph describing your test and its outcome. Post it on social media, send it to a colleague, or include it in a newsletter. The format matters less than the habit of making your thinking visible. Public sharing forces clarity. When you know others will see your work, you naturally tighten your hypothesis, clean up your methodology, and think more carefully about your conclusions. The audience effect improves quality even when no one actually responds. But people do respond. When you share interesting experiments, experts in related fields often offer insights, suggest improvements, or point you toward relevant resources. Your tests become conversation starters that expand your network and accelerate your learning. Franklin understood this principle. He didn't just conduct experiments. He published his results in letters, papers, and demonstrations. This sharing built his reputation as a serious investigator while creating opportunities for collaboration with other researchers. Your experiments don't need to be groundbreaking to be worth sharing. Simple tests that confirm obvious principles can be just as valuable as surprising discoveries. The goal is to build a reputation for evidence-based thinking, not to revolutionize science. The iteration engine. Single experiments rarely provide definitive answers. They generate new questions, reveal unexpected variables, and suggest modifications to your original hypothesis. The real learning happens through iteration, running multiple related tests that build on each other. Plan for this from the beginning. When you design your first test, also sketch out 2 obvious follow-ups. If your hypothesis is confirmed, what would you test next? If it's disproven, what alternative explanation would you investigate? This forward thinking prevents the common pattern of running one test, getting ambiguous results, and then moving on to a completely different question. Instead, you develop lines of inquiry that deepen your understanding through systematic exploration. Leonardo's water flow investigations exemplify this approach. He didn't just test one aspect of fluid dynamics. He explored how water moved around different obstacles through various channel shapes and under different pressure conditions. Each test informed the next, building a comprehensive understanding that informed both his engineering projects and his paintings. Set a simple rule: change only one variable between iterations. If your first test involved visual explanations with diagrams, your second test might try visual explanations with videos. If that shows improvement, your third test might explore different types of diagrams. This systematic approach isolates the factors that actually matter. Kill experiments that show no progress after 2 iterations. Promote experiments that demonstrate predictable results to larger tests or practical applications. This prevents endless tinkering while ensuring promising directions get adequate development. The evidence advantage. After a month of systematic experimentation, something shifts in how you approach problems. Instead of relying on intuition or copying best practices, you default to testing your own hypotheses. Instead of debating opinions, you generate evidence. This evidence-based approach creates multiple advantages. Your confidence increases because your beliefs are grounded in personal experience rather than secondhand information. Your decision-making improves because you understand which factors actually matter in your specific context. Your credibility grows because you can point to concrete results rather than theoretical arguments. Perhaps most importantly, you develop what scientists call experimental thinking, the ability to frame any problem as a testable hypothesis. This skill transfers across domains, making you more effective whether you're designing products, managing teams, or learning new skills. Your notebook becomes your most valuable professional asset, a searchable database of insights that compounds over time. Each new experiment adds to your understanding while connecting to previous discoveries. You build a body of personal research that no one else possesses. But experiments alone aren't enough. Even the most rigorous testing depends on the quality of your observations. If you're not seeing clearly, you're not testing effectively. The next chapter reveals how Sensazione transforms the raw material of perception into the refined input that makes all other learning possible, though the training methods might challenge everything you think you know about paying attention. Hapsember Falleci. Claude Monet painted the same haystack 30 times. Not because he was obsessed with hay, but because he was obsessed with seeing. Each painting captured the haystack under different light conditions: dawn, noon, dusk, winter, summer. To casual observers, he was painting the same subject repeatedly. To Monet, he was training his eye to perceive what others missed entirely. This wasn't artistic indulgence. It was perceptual training that revolutionized how we understand light, color, and visual experience. Monet discovered that the same haystack was actually dozens of different visual experiences, each revealing unique information about how light interacts with form, atmosphere, and time. This is Sensazione, Leonardo's principle of learning through the senses. But it's not about becoming more artistic or observant. in some vague way. It's about systematically upgrading the quality of information your brain receives, because better input creates better output in everything you do. The invisible bottleneck. Most people assume their senses work like recording devices, passive instruments that capture objective reality. This assumption creates a hidden bottleneck that limits everything downstream from perception. Your experiments can only be as good as what you notice. Your models can only be as accurate as the patterns you detect. Your decisions can only be as sharp as the details that inform them. The truth is more interesting and more hopeful. Perception is constructed, not recorded. Your brain actively builds your experience of reality from fragments of sensory data, filling in gaps with assumptions, highlighting some details while ignoring others, and constantly updating its interpretation based on context and expectation. This construction process can be trained. Just as you can strengthen your muscles through exercise, you can strengthen your perceptual abilities through deliberate practice. The question isn't whether you have natural talent for observation, it's whether you're willing to develop the skill systematically. Leonardo understood this deeply. His anatomical drawings weren't just artistic achievements, they were the result of thousands of hours spent training his eye to see structure, proportion, and relationship. He dissected cadavers not once but repeatedly, each time noticing details that had escaped his previous observations. His perception improved through practice, and that improved perception fed everything else he created. The pattern detection advantage. Superior perception creates a compound advantage that most people never recognize. When you can see patterns that others miss, you can predict outcomes that surprise them. When you can detect anomalies early, you can prevent problems that blindside them. When you can notice subtle changes, you can adapt while they're still reacting to obvious shifts. Consider how master chess players develop their pattern recognition. They don't just memorize opening moves, they train their eyes to instantly recognize board configurations that signal opportunity or danger. A grandmaster can glance at a position and immediately see tactical possibilities that would take an amateur minutes to calculate. This isn't magic, it's trained perception. The same principle applies to any domain. Experienced doctors spot symptoms that residents miss. Seasoned investors notice market patterns that escape novices. Expert teachers recognize learning difficulties before they become learning failures. In each case, superior perception creates superior performance. Your own work contains similar opportunities. The question is whether you're training your eye to see them. Are you developing the perceptual skills that would help you spot problems earlier, recognize opportunities faster, and understand patterns more clearly? Or are you assuming that seeing is automatic and focusing all your development efforts on analysis and execution? The cross-modal secret. Here's where Sensazione gets interesting. The fastest way to improve perception in one domain is often to practice perception in a completely different domain. When you train your eye through drawing, you also improve your ability to notice patterns in data. When you develop your ear through music, you also enhance your sensitivity to rhythm in writing. When you refine your sense of touch through crafting, you also sharpen your intuition about interface design. This cross-modal transfer happens because perception involves general cognitive skills that apply across sensory channels. Pattern recognition, attention control, feature extraction, and anomaly detection work similarly whether you're processing visual, auditory, or tactile information. Train these skills in one modality, and they improve in others. Leonardo exemplified this principle. His studies of water flow informed both his paintings and his engineering projects. His observations of bird flight influenced his anatomical drawings and his flying machine designs. His investigations of human proportion shaped his architectural plans and his artistic compositions. Each domain of observation enriched his perception in every other domain. This is why the most effective perceptual training often feels unrelated to your primary work. A software developer might improve their debugging skills by learning to draw. A manager might enhance their team dynamics perception by studying music composition. A writer might sharpen their narrative sense by practicing photography. The key is systematic practice that forces you to notice details you normally ignore, recognize patterns you typically miss, and articulate observations you usually leave implicit. Daily observation calisthenics. The foundation of Sensazione training is what Leonardo practiced daily, simple exercises that strengthen specific perceptual abilities. These aren't elaborate artistic projects, they're 10-minute drills that gradually expand your capacity to notice and process sensory information. Blind contour drawing forces you to look more carefully than you normally would. You place your pen on paper and draw the outline of an object without looking at your paper or lifting your pen. The resulting drawing will look terrible, but that's not the point. The exercise trains your eye to follow edges, notice proportions, and track relationships between parts. After a week of blind contour practice, you'll find yourself noticing structural details in everything from building facades to interface layouts. Color hunting develops your sensitivity to subtle variations that most people overlook. You choose a specific color, say blue, and spend 10 minutes identifying every variation of that color in your environment. Navy, sky blue, teal, periwinkle, cobalt. You'll be amazed how many distinct blues exist in what you previously saw as blue things. This granular attention to color variation transfers to other domains where subtle differences matter. Sound mapping trains your auditory attention and spatial awareness. You sit still for 10 minutes and create a simple diagram of every sound you can hear, noting its direction, intensity, and character. Traffic from the east, air conditioning from above, keyboard clicking from the next room, bird songs from the south window. This exercise reveals the rich acoustic environment that normally fades into background noise while training your ability to parse complex thentild, overlapping information streams. The key is pairing each drill with one of your top Curiosità questions. If you're exploring how attention works, your blind contour drawing might focus on objects that naturally draw or repel visual attention. If you're investigating communication patterns, your sound mapping might categorize different types of acoustic information and their effects on concentration. The translation engine. Once you've developed basic perceptual skills, the next level involves cross-modal translation, converting information from one sensory channel to another. This practice strengthens the cognitive bridges between different types of perception while revealing hidden structures that single-mode observation misses. Take a photograph and convert it into a 6-sentence story. What narrative does the visual information suggest? What happened just before this moment? What might happen next? This exercise forces you to extract temporal and causal information from static visual data, strengthening your ability to read stories in snapshots. Turn a data chart into a sketch. Instead of bars and lines, draw the information as a landscape, a building, or a mechanical system. What would this data look like if it were a physical structure? This translation reveals patterns and relationships that numerical presentation obscures while training your ability to think spatially about abstract information. Convert a piece of music into a diagram. How would you represent the rhythm, melody, and harmony as visual elements? What shapes, colors, and movements capture the musical structure? This practice develops your sensitivity to pattern, flow, and relationship while strengthening the connections between auditory and visual processing. Each translation exercise reveals different aspects of the source material while building cognitive flexibility. You're not just practicing perception, you're practicing the kind of creative thinking that finds unexpected connections and generates novel solutions. Perspective stacking for depth. Single viewpoints create blind spots. Multiple viewpoints reveal dimensionality. Perspective stacking involves systematically examining the same subject from different scales and angles, building a more complete understanding than any single observation could provide. Start with micro, meso, and macro perspectives. If you're observing a team meeting, the micro view might focus on individual facial expressions and body language. The meso view might examine interaction patterns and speaking time distribution. The macro view might consider how this meeting fits into larger organizational rhythms and cultural patterns. Each perspective reveals different information and suggests different interventions. Micro-observations might highlight individual stress or engagement levels. Meso-observations might reveal communication bottlenecks or power dynamics. Macro-observations might expose systemic issues or strategic misalignments. You can also rotate through role-based perspectives. How would a user, operator, investor, scientist, and artist each view the same situation? What would each prioritize? What would each ignore? These different lenses highlight different aspects of complex situations while preventing the tunnel vision that comes from single perspective analysis. Document these perspective shifts systematically. Create 3 boxes labeled micro, meso, and macro. Fill each with 1 observation, 1 risk, and 1 opportunity. This structure forces you to extract actionable insights from each viewpoint while maintaining awareness of how different scales interact. The constraint advantage. Counterintuitively, constraints often improve perception more than freedom does. When you limit your tools, time, or options, you're forced to notice details and possibilities that abundance obscures. This is why some of the most powerful perceptual training involves artificial limitations. Try drawing with your non-dominant hand. The awkwardness forces you to slow down and pay attention to details you normally process automatically. Sketch using only 3 lines. The constraint forces you to identify the most essential features while ignoring decorative details. Describe a complex scene using only single-syllable words. The limitation forces you to find simple, direct language for subtle observations. These constraints aren't punishments. They're focusing devices that direct your attention towards specific aspects of perception. Just as weight training uses artificial resistance to build strength, perceptual training uses artificial constraints to build observational skill. Time constraints work particularly well. Set a timer for exactly 10 minutes and stick to it religiously. This prevents perfectionist paralysis while building the skill of rapid, accurate observation. You learn to see efficiently rather than exhaustively, focusing on the details that matter most rather than trying to capture everything. Making the invisible visible. One of the most powerful aspects of Sensazione training is its ability to reveal patterns and relationships that normally remain invisible. When you practice systematic observation, you begin to notice the subtle signals that predict larger changes, the hidden structures that organize apparent chaos, and the recurring patterns that connect seemingly unrelated phenomena. This enhanced perception becomes a competitive advantage in any field. You spot market shifts before they become obvious. You recognize team dynamics before they become problematic. You identify learning difficulties before they become learning failures. You see opportunities while others are still focused on problems. The key is building what cognitive scientists call expert perception, the ability to rapidly extract meaningful patterns from complex information. This isn't mystical intuition. It's trained pattern recognition that operates faster than conscious analysis. Document your observations systematically. Create a weekly noticing reel that captures 5 images and 5 lines describing what you've observed. Share these observations with others and ask what they see that you missed. This external feedback accelerates your perceptual development while revealing your remaining blind spots. The compound effect. After a month of systematic Sensazione practice, something remarkable happens. Your baseline level of awareness increases. You notice things automatically that previously required conscious effort. Your experiments become more precise because you're gathering higher quality data. Your models become more accurate because you're detecting subtler patterns. Your decisions become sharper because you're working with richer information. This enhanced perception also changes how others interact with you. They begin seeking your perspective on complex situations because you consistently notice details they miss. They trust your judgment because your observations prove reliable. They value your input because you see possibilities they overlook. Perhaps most importantly, your creative work becomes more distinctive. When your perception is trained, your output reflects details and relationships that others miss. Your writing includes observations that feel fresh because they're genuinely seen rather than imagined. Your designs solve problems that others don't even notice. Your strategies address dynamics that competitors overlook. This distinctiveness isn't just aesthetic, it's strategic. In a world where most people process the same information in the same ways, superior perception creates genuine competitive advantage. But enhanced perception alone isn't enough. Even the clearest observations can lead to poor decisions if you can't handle the uncertainty and ambiguity that detailed perception often reveals. The next chapter explores how Sfumato teaches you to hold multiple possibilities simultaneously without paralysis, a skill that becomes essential when you start seeing more than you expected. Sfumato. Look closely at the Mona Lisa's smile. The more you stare, the more elusive it becomes. Is she smiling, smirking, melancholy? The expression seems to shift depending on where you focus your attention, never quite resolving into a single definitive emotion. This isn't an accident of artistic technique. It's a deliberate demonstration of sfumato, Leonardo's term for the subtle gradations and soft transitions that exist between certainties. In painting, sfumato creates depth and mystery through the absence of harsh lines. In thinking, it creates breakthrough insights through the deliberate embrace of ambiguity. Most people treat uncertainty as a problem to be solved as quickly as possible. They rush toward closure, preferring wrong answers to no answers. But Leonardo understood something counterintuitive. The space between certainties is often where the most valuable discoveries live. Learning to inhabit that space without panic, that's the essence of sfumato. The certainty trap. We live in a culture that worships decisive action. Bias toward action, the business gurus preach. Move fast and break things, the tech leaders chant. Analysis paralysis is the enemy of progress, the productivity experts warn. This creates enormous pressure to choose quickly, decide definitively, and stick with your choices regardless of new information. This pressure isn't entirely wrong. Endless deliberation can indeed become a form of procrastination. But the opposite extreme, premature certainty, kills more good ideas than indecision ever could. When you lock on to the first plausible solution, you stop looking for better ones. When you commit too early to a single path, you miss the signals that could redirect you toward breakthrough territory. The most innovative solutions often emerge not from quick decisions, but from sustained exploration of multiple possibilities. They live in the tension between competing approaches, in the synthesis of seemingly contradictory ideas, in the patient cultivation of options that don't yet make complete sense. Reed Hastings understood this when he ran Netflix. In the early 2000s, while the company was still primarily a DVD by mail service, Hastings began quietly developing streaming technology. He didn't shut down the DVD operation or go all in on streaming immediately. Instead, he ran both models in parallel, watching adoption signals and market trends, waiting for the right moment to shift resources. This wasn't indecision, it was strategic ambiguity. By maintaining two viable paths simultaneously, Hastings preserved optionality while gathering the evidence needed to make an informed transition. The result was one of the most successful business pivots in corporate history, executed with timing that seemed prescient but was actually the result of careful sfumato practice. The art of productive ambiguity. Sfumato isn't about avoiding decisions, it's about timing them perfectly. The key insight is that ambiguity can be productive if it's bounded by structure. Instead of drifting in uncertainty, you create frameworks that allow you to hold multiple hypotheses simultaneously while systematically gathering the evidence needed to choose between them. This requires a fundamental shift in how you think about decision-making. Instead of asking, "What should I do?" you ask, "What would I need to know to make this decision well?" Instead of forcing premature closure, you design experiments that will clarify the trade-offs. Instead of choosing based on current information, you preserve options until better information becomes available. Leonardo exemplified this approach in both his art and his engineering. His notebooks reveal multiple design alternatives for the same flying machine, each exploring different mechanical principles. He didn't commit to a single approach until he understood the physics well enough to predict which would work best. His paintings often went through multiple compositional iterations before he settled on the final arrangement. This wasn't perfectionism, it was systematic exploration. Leonardo understood that the first idea is rarely the best idea, but the best idea often emerges from the patient development of multiple first ideas. By keeping alternatives alive longer than most people would, he consistently found solutions that others missed. The chiaroscuro method. In painting, chiaroscuro refers to the dramatic interplay of light and shadow that creates depth and emotional impact. In decision-making, it refers to the deliberate use of contrast to clarify trade-offs and reveal the true shape of your options. Most people make decisions by focusing on the positive aspects of their preferred choice while downplaying its costs and risks. This creates a distorted view that leads to overconfidence and poor outcomes. The chiaroscuro method forces you to examine both the bright benefits and the dark costs of each option, using contrast to reveal what's really at stake. Create a simple grid with 4 columns: gains, pains, risks, and costs. Fill this out for each option you're considering, forcing yourself to be honest about both the upside and downside of each path. The goal isn't to find the perfect option, it's to understand the real trade-offs so you can choose with intention rather than impulse. The magic happens when you compare these grids side by side. Patterns emerge that weren't visible when you were considering each option in isolation. You might discover that option A has higher potential gains, but also higher potential pains. Option B might have lower risks, but also lower upside. Option C might have manageable costs, but unclear benefits. These contrasts don't make the decision for you, but they clarify what you're actually choosing between. Instead of comparing fantasies, you're comparing realistic assessments of different futures. This leads to better decisions and fewer regrets. Multi-scale perspective shifts. One of the most powerful aspects of Sfumato thinking is its ability to reveal how the same situation looks different at different scales. What seems like a clear choice at the micro level might be obviously wrong at the macro level. What appears risky in the short term might be conservative in the long term. What looks expensive today might be cheap tomorrow. This is why effective Sfumato practice involves systematically shifting between micro, meso, and macro perspectives before making important decisions. Ask the same question at each scale and notice how the answers change. At the micro level, you might be choosing between 2 job offers based on salary, benefits, and immediate working conditions. At the meso level, you might be choosing between 2 career trajectories with different learning opportunities and network effects. At the macro level, you might be choosing between 2 life philosophies with different implications for meaning and fulfillment. Each scale reveals different risks and opportunities. Microanalysis might favor the higher-paying job. Mesoanalysis might favor the job with better learning potential. Macroanalysis might favor the job that aligns with your deeper values. The goal isn't to find the right scale. It's to understand how your choice looks from each vantage point so you can make a decision that works across all relevant timeframes. The 2-track strategy. One of the most practical applications of Sfumato thinking is the 2-track plan, a structured way to keep multiple options alive while systematically gathering the evidence needed to choose between them. Instead of forcing an immediate decision, you define 2 viable paths and the conditions under which you'd choose each one. Path A might be the safer, more conventional choice. Path B might be the riskier, more innovative alternative. Instead of choosing immediately, you define what evidence would convince you to go with each path. You set a decision date and commit to gathering that evidence systematically. This approach transforms anxiety-inducing uncertainty into productive exploration. Instead of worrying about making the wrong choice, you focus on gathering the information needed to make the right choice. Instead of second-guessing your decision, You trust the process you've designed to surface the relevant factors. The key is being explicit about your decision criteria up front. What metrics would convince you that path A is working? What signals would indicate that path B is the better bet? What external factors would change your assessment? By defining these criteria in advance, you prevent post hoc rationalization and mood-based decision-making. Decision windowing. One of the biggest challenges in Sfumato practice is preventing the productive exploration of options from becoming endless dithering. The solution is decision windowing, scheduling specific times for making choices and sticking to that schedule regardless of whether you feel ready. Choose a regular decision day. Many people find Friday afternoons work well and commit to making all pending decisions on that day. Spend Monday through Thursday gathering information, running experiments, and exploring options. But when Friday arrives, you choose based on the best information available, even if it feels incomplete. This rhythm prevents several common decision-making pathologies. It stops you from making impulsive choices based on temporary emotions or recent events. It prevents endless research cycles that never lead to action. It creates accountability that forces you to actually use the information you've gathered rather than continuing to gather more. The windowing approach also builds trust with others. When people know you have a regular decision rhythm, they can plan around it. They know when to provide input and when to expect resolution. This predictability reduces organizational anxiety while improving the quality of the information you receive. The power of reversible steps. Not all decisions are created equal. Some choices lock you into irreversible paths with high switching costs. Others can be easily undone if new information emerges. Sfumato thinking involves distinguishing between these two types of decisions and treating them very differently. For reversible decisions, bias toward action. If you can easily change course later, the cost of being wrong is low and the value of learning is high. Take the smaller apartment if you can move again in 6 months. Try the new project structure if you can revert to the old one. Launch the experimental product if you can shut it down quickly. For irreversible decisions, bias toward patience. If the switching costs are high, invest more time in exploration before committing. Get more data points, run more experiments, consult more experts. The higher the stakes, the more Sfumato patience is justified. This distinction helps you allocate your decision-making energy appropriately. You don't need to agonize over reversible choices, and you shouldn't rush irreversible ones. Most people get this backwards, spending weeks debating minor reversible decisions while rushing through major irreversible ones. Naming the unknown. One of the most practical techniques in Sfumato practice is explicitly naming and tracking your unknowns. Instead of pretending you have more certainty than you actually possess, you maintain a clear inventory of what you don't yet know and what you're doing to find out. Create a simple list of the key uncertainties affecting your decision. For each unknown, identify a specific test or information source that could reduce it. Set deadlines for gathering this information and track your progress systematically. This practice has several benefits. It prevents you from making decisions based on assumptions you haven't tested. It helps you focus your research efforts on the uncertainties that actually matter. It creates a clear sense of progress even when you haven't reached a final decision yet. Most importantly, it transforms the anxiety of uncertainty into the excitement of investigation. Instead of feeling stuck because you don't know something, you feel energized because you have a plan to find out. The unknown becomes a puzzle to solve rather than a problem to avoid. The compound advantage. After practicing Sfumato for several weeks, you'll notice a shift in how you approach complex decisions. Instead of feeling pressured to choose immediately, you'll feel confident in your ability to explore options systematically. Instead of second-guessing your choices, you'll trust the process that led to them. This confidence creates a compound advantage. You make better decisions because you're working with better information. You experience less regret because you've considered the alternatives thoroughly. You adapt more quickly when circumstances change because you've maintained awareness of multiple possibilities. Perhaps most importantly, you develop a reputation for good judgment. People begin seeking your perspective on difficult decisions because you consistently demonstrate the ability to see multiple sides of complex issues. Your Sfumato practice becomes a leadership asset that opens doors and creates opportunities. The enhanced perception you developed through Sensazione now combines with the uncertainty tolerance you've built through Sfumato to create a powerful foundation for the next level of Da Vincian thinking. But holding multiple possibilities and gathering better information is only valuable if you can build accurate models of how things actually work. The next chapter reveals how Arte Scienza fuses intuitive creativity with rigorous analysis to create explanations that not only feel right, but actually predict what happens next. Though the method for testing these models might surprise you. Chapter 6, Scienza. Hedy Lamarr had a problem. It was 1940, and radio-controlled torpedoes kept missing their targets because enemy forces could jam their guidance signals. While other engineers focused on building stronger transmitters or better receivers, Lamarr approached the challenge differently. She imagined the radio signal as a conversation that could hop between frequencies so quickly that jamming became impossible. This wasn't just creative thinking, it was Arte Scienza in action. Lamarr combined artistic imagination. What if signals could dance between frequencies like a pianist's fingers across keys? With rigorous engineering, the mathematical precision needed to synchronize transmitter and receiver across dozens of frequency changes per second. Her frequency hopping invention became the foundation of modern Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS technology. This is what Leonardo meant by Arte Scienza, the marriage of creative imagination with systematic analysis. Not art versus science, but art plus science, each amplifying the other to create solutions that neither could achieve alone. The false binary. Most people treat creativity and analysis as opposing forces. You're either a right-brain creative or a left-brain analytical type. You either trust your intuition or rely on data. You either think outside the box or work within established frameworks. This binary thinking creates unnecessary limitations. It forces you to choose between imagination and rigor when the most powerful solutions require both. It makes you suspicious of creative insights that can't be immediately proven, and skeptical of analytical models that don't feel intuitively right. Leonardo rejected this false choice entirely. His notebooks reveal a mind that moved fluidly between artistic vision and scientific investigation, using each to inform and strengthen the other. He would sketch a flying machine based on bird observation, then analyze the mechanical forces involved, then redesign based on his calculations, then test with physical models, then refine based on results. This wasn't indecision. It was systematic exploration that used multiple ways of knowing to converge on truth. The artistic imagination generated possibilities that pure analysis might miss. The scientific rigor tested those possibilities against reality. The combination produced insights that neither approach could achieve alone. Modern innovation requires the same integration. The most successful products combine elegant design with robust engineering. The most effective strategies blend creative vision with analytical precision. The most valuable insights emerge when intuitive pattern recognition meets systematic investigation. The mechanism imperative. Beautiful ideas that don't work are just decoration. Rigorous analysis that doesn't inspire action is just academic exercise. The bridge between them is mechanism, understanding not just what happens, but how and why it happens. Most explanations stop at correlation. When we do X, Y tends to happen. This creates the illusion of understanding without the substance. You can repeat the action, but you can't adapt it to new circumstances because you don't understand the underlying forces at work. Mechanism thinking goes deeper. It asks, what are the specific steps that connect X to Y? What conditions must be present for this connection to work? What could disrupt it? What other outcomes might the same mechanism produce under different circumstances? This deeper understanding creates transferable knowledge. When you understand the mechanism behind a successful marketing campaign, you can adapt those principles to different products, audiences, and channels. When you understand the mechanism behind effective team communication, you can apply those insights to various group dynamics and organizational contexts. Florence Nightingale demonstrated this principle during the Crimean War. Instead of simply documenting that soldiers were dying at alarming rates, she created visual diagrams that revealed the mechanisms of mortality. Her famous Rose diagrams showed that more soldiers died from preventable diseases than from battle wounds, and that these deaths clustered around specific sanitation failures. These diagrams didn't just document problems, they revealed the causal pathways that created them. By making the mechanisms visible, Nightingale enabled targeted interventions that dramatically reduced mortality rates. Her Arte Scienza approach saved thousands of lives by combining statistical rigor with visual communication that inspired action. The dissection process. Before you can map a mechanism, you need to dissect the problem into its component parts. This isn't about breaking things down randomly. It's about identifying the actors, actions, and flows that create the outcomes you're trying to understand or influence. Start by listing the key actors involved in your situation. These might be people, systems, processes, or environmental factors. For a team productivity challenge, your actors might include individual team members, communication tools, project management systems, external stakeholders, and organizational culture. Next, identify the critical actions these actors take. What specific behaviors, decisions, or processes drive the outcomes you care about? Focus on actions that are observable and potentially modifiable. Vague concepts like poor communication need to be broken down into specific behaviors like delayed email responses or unclear project requirements. Finally, map the flows between actors and actions. How does information move through the system? Where do resources get allocated? What triggers decisions or changes in behavior? These flows often reveal the hidden dynamics that determine whether your system works well or poorly. The goal isn't to capture every detail, it's to identify the essential elements that drive the outcomes you care about. Cross out anything that's interesting but not causal. Circle the factors that seem to have the most influence on results. This focused dissection creates the raw material for mechanism mapping. Visual hypothesis construction. Once you've dissected your problem, the next step is constructing a visual hypothesis about how the pieces fit together. This isn't about creating a pretty diagram. It's about forcing yourself to be specific about the relationships you think exist between different elements. Use boxes to represent states or conditions, and arrows to represent causal relationships. But here's the crucial part. Put verbs on your arrows. Instead of drawing a vague line between team meetings and project progress, write increases, delays, clarifies, or confuses on the arrow. This forces you to be explicit about the mechanism you're proposing. Mark your uncertainties clearly. Use question marks to highlight relationships you're not sure about. Add notes about the conditions under which you think each relationship holds true. This honest acknowledgement of uncertainty prevents overconfidence while highlighting where you need more evidence. Keep your first map simple, 5 boxes maximum. If you can't fit your hypothesis into 5 boxes, you probably don't understand it well enough yet. Complex diagrams often hide unclear thinking behind impressive-looking complexity. Simple diagrams force clarity and reveal gaps in your logic. The visual format serves multiple purposes. It makes your thinking visible to others, enabling feedback and collaboration. It forces you to be specific about relationships that might remain vague in verbal descriptions. It reveals missing pieces and logical inconsistencies that aren't obvious in linear explanations. The prediction test. A mechanism map is only as good as its ability to predict what will happen next. This is where many well-intentioned models fail. They explain the past perfectly, but offer no guidance for the future. The prediction test separates useful models from elaborate storytelling. Before you gather any new data, write down what your mechanism predicts will happen under specific conditions. If you change variable X, what should happen to variable Y? How quickly? Under what circumstances might this prediction fail? Be specific enough that someone else could test your prediction independently. This prediction-first approach prevents the most common modeling error, retrofitting explanations to match whatever data you happen to collect. When you know what you expect to see before you look, you can distinguish between confirmation and genuine learning. Design the smallest possible intervention to test your prediction. If your model suggests that clearer project requirements will reduce revision cycles, don't redesign your entire project management system. Instead, try writing more detailed requirements for one small project and measure the difference. If your model suggests that regular check-ins will improve team alignment, schedule brief daily stand-ups for 1 week and track specific alignment metrics. The goal isn't to prove your model right, it's to learn whether your model is useful. Models that make accurate predictions are worth keeping and refining. Models that consistently miss the mark need to be revised or abandoned, regardless of how elegant or intuitive they seem. Systems thinking integration. Individual mechanisms rarely operate in isolation. They're embedded in larger systems with feedback loops, delays, and unintended consequences that can amplify or dampen their effects. Understanding these system dynamics is crucial for predicting how your mechanisms will behave in real-world conditions. Look for reinforcing loops, cycles where effects amplify causes, creating either virtuous or vicious spirals. A successful product launch generates revenue, which funds better marketing, which drives more sales, which generates more revenue. But the same dynamic can work in reverse. Poor initial sales reduce marketing budget, which leads to fewer sales, which further reduces budget. Identify balancing loops, natural limits, or corrective mechanisms that prevent infinite growth or decline. Market saturation eventually limits sales growth. Hiring too quickly can strain training capacity and reduce quality. Recognition of these natural balancing forces helps you set realistic expectations and plan for sustainable growth. Mark leverage points, places where small changes can produce large effects. These are often found at the beginning of causal chains, in information flows that influence many decisions, or in feedback loops that amplify effects over time. A small improvement in hiring criteria might have enormous long-term effects on team performance. A minor change in how information is presented might dramatically improve decision quality. Systems thinking doesn't require complex diagrams or sophisticated software. Simple sketches that show stocks, things that accumulate, flows, things that change stocks, and feedback loops, flows that influence other flows, can reveal powerful insights about leverage and unintended consequences. The iteration imperative. Your first mechanism map will be wrong. This isn't a failure, it's the starting point for learning. The value of Arte Scienza thinking comes not from creating perfect models immediately, but from systematically improving your models through testing and revision. When your predictions don't match reality, resist the temptation to dismiss the discrepancy or rationalize it away. Instead, treat it as valuable information about where your model needs improvement. What assumptions were incorrect? What relationships did you miss? What variables did you underestimate? Revise your model based on what you learned, but change only one element at a time. If you modify multiple relationships simultaneously, you won't know which change improved your predictions. This disciplined approach to iteration builds cumulative understanding rather than random adjustments. Keep a log of your model versions and their predictions. This creates a learning trail that reveals patterns in your thinking and helps you avoid repeating the same mistakes. Over time, you'll develop better intuition about which types of mechanisms are likely to work in which contexts. Share your models with others, especially people who understand the domain you're mapping. Fresh eyes often spot assumptions you've missed or relationships you've oversimplified. The act of explaining your model to someone else frequently reveals gaps in your logic that weren't obvious when you were working alone. The clarity advantage. After several weeks of Arte Scienza practice, you'll notice a shift in how you approach complex problems. Instead of getting overwhelmed by complexity, you'll automatically start looking for the underlying mechanisms that drive outcomes. Instead of accepting vague explanations, you'll push for specific, testable hypotheses about how things actually work. This clarity creates multiple advantages. Your communication becomes more persuasive because you can explain not just what you think should happen, but why you think it will happen. Your planning becomes more realistic because you understand the causal chains that connect actions to outcomes. Your problem solving becomes more effective because you focus on root causes rather than symptoms. Perhaps most importantly, your models become assets that compound over time. Each successful mechanism you map becomes a tool you can apply to similar situations. Each failed prediction teaches you something about the limits of your current understanding. Your collection of tested models becomes a personal knowledge base that makes you more effective across multiple domains. Teams that adopt Arte Scienza thinking experience faster alignment and better execution. When everyone can see the same mechanism map, debates shift from arguing about opinions to testing hypotheses. When the logic behind decisions is visible, implementation becomes more consistent and adaptation becomes more systematic. But even the most elegant models are worthless if your body can't sustain the focus and energy needed to execute them effectively. The next chapter reveals how Corporalità transforms your physical presence into a thinking partner that amplifies rather than limits your cognitive capabilities, though the specific practices might challenge everything you believe about the relationship between mind and body. Chapter 7, Corporalità. Michelangelo approached the block of marble with his hands, not his eyes. Before he ever picked up a chisel, he would run his palms across the stone's surface, feeling for flaws, sensing the grain, understanding the material's natural tensions and possibilities. "The sculpture is already there," he would say. "I just remove what doesn't belong." This wasn't mystical thinking. It was embodied cognition in action. Michelangelo understood that his hands were thinking tools, not just execution instruments. The tactile information they gathered shaped his artistic vision as much as any visual analysis. His fingers detected structural weaknesses that his eyes might miss. His touch revealed the stone's natural lines of force that would determine how the sculpture could emerge. This is corporalità, Leonardo's principle that the body is not just a vessel for the mind, but an active partner in thinking itself. Your hands, your posture, your movement patterns, even your breathing rhythm all influence the quality and character of your thoughts. Most people treat their body as a life support system for their brain. Leonardo treated his body as an extension of his intelligence. The thinking body revolution. For centuries, Western culture has promoted a false separation between mind and body, treating physical experience as somehow less important than mental activity. We sit motionless for hours, believing that stillness enhances concentration. We work in sterile environments, assuming that physical comfort doesn't affect cognitive performance. We treat our hands as mere input devices for keyboards and touchscreens. Recent cognitive science research has shattered these assumptions. Studies now show that your posture affects your confidence and decision-making. Your hand gestures influence your problem-solving ability. Your walking pace changes your creative output. Your breathing pattern alters your emotional state and attention span. This isn't just correlation, it's causation. Your brain evolved as part of an integrated system that includes your entire body. The neural pathways that control movement are intimately connected to the pathways that control thinking. When you change how you move, you literally change how you think. Consider how different types of physical activity affect your mental state. A brisk walk often generates insights that hours of desk-bound analysis couldn't produce. Standing during brainstorming sessions typically yields more creative ideas than sitting. Working with your hands, whether it's sketching, building, or crafting, often reveals solutions that pure conceptual thinking misses. This isn't because physical activity clears your head or provides a mental break. It's because different physical states activate different cognitive networks. Your body isn't just carrying your brain around, It's actively participating in the thinking process. The material intelligence doctrine. Leonardo's notebooks reveal a mind that thought through making. He didn't just design flying machines, he built models and tested them. He didn't just theorize about water flow, he constructed channels and observed the results. He didn't just imagine anatomical structures, he dissected cadavers and drew what he discovered. This hands-on approach wasn't just about testing ideas, it was about generating them. The act of building revealed possibilities that pure conceptual thinking couldn't access. Materials have their own logic, their own constraints, their own suggestions for how problems might be solved. When you work with your hands, you enter into a dialogue with physical reality that often produces insights unavailable through mental analysis alone. Modern designers and engineers understand this principle. They build rough prototypes not just to test their ideas, but to discover what their ideas could become. A cardboard mock-up of a product interface reveals usability issues that wireframes miss. A clay model of a building exposes spatial relationships that blueprints obscure. A paper prototype of a service experience highlights friction points that process maps overlook. This material thinking extends beyond traditional design disciplines. A writer might use index cards to physically manipulate the structure of an argument. A strategist might use building blocks to model organizational relationships. A teacher might use physical objects to make abstract concepts tangible for students. The key insight is that materials think differently than minds do. They have their own constraints, affordances, and possibilities. When you engage with materials directly, you access a form of intelligence that complements and enhances your conceptual thinking. The energy architecture. Your cognitive performance isn't just determined by your knowledge and skills, it's fundamentally limited by your energy management. Attention is a finite resource that depletes with use and requires specific conditions to replenish. Most people treat their energy like an unlimited resource, pushing through fatigue and wondering why their thinking becomes fuzzy and their creativity dries up. Leonardo understood that peak cognitive performance requires careful attention to physical rhythms and environmental conditions. His notebooks reveal a systematic approach to managing energy that modern neuroscience has validated. He worked in focused bursts, followed by deliberate recovery periods. He paid attention to lighting, temperature, and acoustics. He used movement and manual work to reset his attention and generate new perspectives. The human attention system operates in natural cycles of approximately 90 minutes. During the first part of each cycle, your focus is sharp and your analytical thinking is strong. As the cycle progresses, your attention becomes more diffuse and your associative thinking becomes more active. At the end of the cycle, you need a brief recovery period before the next cycle begins. Most people fight against these natural rhythms, trying to maintain peak focus for hours at a time. This creates a downward spiral where fatigue accumulates, performance degrades, and frustration increases. The solution isn't to push harder, it's to work with your natural energy architecture instead of against it. Schedule brief movement breaks every 90 minutes. These don't need to be elaborate. A few minutes of walking, stretching, or deep breathing can reset your attention and prepare you for the next focus cycle. The key is consistency and timing. Regular small resets prevent the energy crashes that require longer recovery periods. The hand-brain connection. Your hands contain more nerve endings than almost any other part of your body. They're directly connected to large areas of your brain through dense neural pathways that evolved to support complex manipulation tasks. When you work with your hands, you're not just executing ideas, you're thinking with a different part of your nervous system. This hand-brain connection explains why so many breakthrough insights emerge during manual activities. The act of sketching often clarifies thoughts that remain muddled in verbal form. Building physical models reveals design problems that computer simulations miss. Working with clay or other malleable materials allows you to explore forms and relationships that are difficult to imagine abstractly. The key is engaging your hands in ways that connect to your current thinking challenges. If you're struggling with a communication problem, try sketching different ways to visualize the information. If you're working on a process improvement, build a physical model using simple materials. If you're developing a strategy, use movable objects to represent different stakeholders and their relationships. These aren't just illustration exercises, they're thinking exercises that use your hands as cognitive tools. The physical constraints and possibilities of materials often suggest solutions that pure mental analysis misses. The tactile feedback provides information that visual analysis alone can't capture. Yo-Yo Ma, the renowned cellist, practices scales daily, not just to maintain technical proficiency, but to preserve what he calls physical thinking. The repetitive finger movements create a meditative state that allows musical ideas to emerge naturally. The physical practice maintains neural pathways that support both technical execution and creative expression. The prototype advantage. Physical prototypes have a unique power to reveal hidden assumptions and expose design flaws that remain invisible in conceptual discussions. When you build something, even roughly, you're forced to make decisions about details that you might otherwise ignore. These details often determine whether an idea actually works in practice. Start with the simplest possible materials: paper, cardboard, tape, clay. The goal isn't to create something beautiful or permanent, but to externalize your thinking in a form you can manipulate and test. Set a strict time limit, 30 minutes maximum, for your first attempt. This constraint prevents perfectionism while forcing you to focus on essential features. Build to think, not to impress. Your prototype should be ugly, rough, and obviously temporary. If it looks too polished, you've probably spent too much time on appearance and not enough time on function. The value lies in the insights you gain from the building process, not in the quality of the final object. Document your prototyping process with before and after photos. This creates a visual record of your thinking evolution and makes it easier to share your insights with others. The act of photographing also forces you to articulate what you learned and what you might try next. Scrap your first attempt and build again. The second version will almost always be better because you've learned from the constraints and possibilities revealed by the first. This iterative approach builds cumulative understanding while preventing attachment to early ideas that might not be optimal. Environmental orchestration. Your physical environment is not neutral, it actively shapes your cognitive performance. Lighting affects your alertness and mood. Temperature influences your attention span and decision-making. Noise levels impact your ability to concentrate or think creatively. Spatial organization affects your mental organization. Leonardo was meticulous about his working environment, adjusting lighting, organizing tools, and arranging materials to support different types of thinking. He understood that the external environment becomes part of your extended cognitive system. When your environment is well designed, it reduces cognitive load and enhances performance. When it's poorly designed, it creates friction and fatigue. Create different physical zones for different types of thinking. Use standing areas for brainstorming and creative work. Use comfortable seating for detailed analysis and writing. Use open spaces for collaborative discussions. Use quiet corners for focused concentration. The physical transition between zones helps signal mental transitions between different types of cognitive work. Keep materials and tools visible and easily accessible. When you have to search for basic supplies, you lose momentum and break your flow state. A well-organized materials box with paper, pens, tape, scissors, and simple building materials removes friction from the prototyping process. Pay attention to lighting and acoustics. Natural light generally supports alertness and well-being better than artificial light. Moderate background noise can enhance creativity, while silence is often better for analytical work. Experiment with different conditions and notice how they affect your thinking quality. The movement thought loop. Different types of movement activate different cognitive networks. Walking tends to enhance creative and associative thinking. Standing promotes alertness and confidence. Rhythmic activities like drumming or bouncing can help with pattern recognition and problem solving. Stretching and breathing exercises can reset attention and reduce stress. Use movement strategically to support specific thinking goals. When you're stuck on a creative problem, take a walk without trying to solve it directly. Let your mind wander while your body moves. Often, the solution will emerge naturally during or shortly after the walk. When you need to make an important decision, stand up and move around while considering your options. The physical activity often provides clarity that sitting and thinking can't achieve. The change in perspective, literally looking at your workspace from different angles, can trigger new insights about the problem you're facing. When you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed, use gentle movement to reset your nervous system. Simple stretches, deep breathing, or brief walks can shift you from a reactive state to a responsive state, improving both your thinking quality and your emotional regulation. The tool exploration practice. Tools extend your cognitive capabilities by changing what's possible to think and create. A new software application opens up different ways of organizing information. A different drawing instrument enables different types of visual expression. A novel building material suggests different structural possibilities. The key is approaching tools as thinking partners, not just efficiency enhancers. When you learn a new tool, you're not just acquiring a skill, you're expanding your cognitive repertoire. Each tool has its own affordances and constraints that shape what you can imagine and create. Dedicate time each month to exploring a new tool or material. This doesn't mean becoming an expert. It means understanding the tool's basic capabilities and how they might apply to your current challenges. Focus on affordances rather than mastery. What does this tool make easy? What does it make difficult? What does it make possible that wasn't possible before? Build small demonstrations that showcase the tool's unique capabilities. These don't need to be practical or beautiful. They just need to help you understand how the tool thinks. A 5-minute sketch with a new drawing app. A simple structure built with an unfamiliar material. A brief experiment with a different software interface. Keep a running list of tools you want to explore, but resist the urge to acquire them all immediately. Tool overload can be as limiting as tool poverty. Focus on understanding each tool deeply enough to recognize when it might be useful for future challenges. The compound physical effect. After several weeks of Corporalità practice, you'll notice changes that extend far beyond improved energy management. Your thinking becomes more flexible because you're regularly switching between different physical and cognitive states. Your problem-solving becomes more creative because you're engaging multiple forms of intelligence. Your communication becomes more effective because you're using visual and tactile channels alongside verbal ones. Perhaps most importantly, you develop what might be called embodied confidence, a deep trust in your ability to think through challenges using your entire cognitive system, not just your analytical mind. This confidence allows you to tackle more complex problems because you know you have multiple ways of approaching them. Your work begins to carry a distinctive signature that reflects your integrated approach to thinking and making. Others notice that your solutions have a different quality. They're more grounded, more tested, more thoughtful about implementation details. Your prototypes and models become communication tools that help others understand complex ideas more quickly. But individual mastery, however sophisticated, has natural limits. The most powerful applications of Da Vincian thinking emerge when you can connect insights across different domains and create hybrid solutions that no single discipline could achieve. The next chapter reveals how Connessione transforms your diverse skills and interests into a unified creative force. Though the specific method for building these connections might challenge your assumptions about how expertise actually develops. Chapter 8, Connessione. Steve Jobs dropped out of Reed College, but kept auditing classes that fascinated him. One was a calligraphy course that taught him about typefaces, spacing, and the subtle art of beautiful lettering. At the time, it seemed completely irrelevant to his future. 10 years later, when designing the first Macintosh computer, That calligraphy knowledge became the foundation for revolutionary typography that transformed how we interact with digital text. This wasn't luck. It was Connessione in action. Jobs understood something that most specialists miss. The most valuable innovations happen at the intersections between fields, not within their boundaries. While his competitors focused on making computers faster and cheaper, Jobs connected aesthetic principles from calligraphy with engineering principles from computing to create something entirely new. This is the essence of Connessione, Leonardo's principle of making connections between seemingly unrelated domains. It's not about being a generalist who knows a little about everything. It's about being a synthesist who can spot the hidden patterns that link different fields and use those patterns to create hybrid solutions that no single discipline could achieve. The specialist trap. We live in an age of hyper-specialization. The pressure to niche down is everywhere. Find your lane, become the expert, own your category. This advice isn't wrong. Depth matters, and markets reward expertise. But taken to extremes, specialization creates invisible barriers that prevent breakthrough thinking. When you stay within a single domain, you inherit that domain's assumptions, limitations, and blind spots. You become fluent in its language, but deaf to insights from other vocabularies. You master its tools, but remain ignorant of techniques that could revolutionize your approach. You solve its recognized problems, but miss the opportunities that exist in the spaces between disciplines. The most transformative innovations typically emerge from these in-between spaces. The smartphone wasn't invented by phone companies. It was created by connecting computing, telecommunications, and interface design. The field of behavioral economics wasn't developed by traditional economists. It emerged from connecting psychology with economic theory. The most successful entrepreneurs often come from outside the industries they disrupt because they're not constrained by conventional wisdom. This doesn't mean abandoning expertise. It means expanding how you think about expertise. Instead of becoming deeper and narrower, you become deeper and more connected. Instead of knowing everything about one thing, you know how multiple things relate to each other. Instead of being the best in your field, you become the bridge between fields. The hidden architecture of connection. Most people think connections happen randomly, a chance encounter, a lucky insight, a serendipitous conversation. But Leonardo's notebooks reveal a more systematic approach. He didn't wait for connections to appear. He actively constructed them through deliberate practice and structured exploration. The key insight is that connections exist at multiple levels. Surface connections are obvious and often superficial. Both music and mathematics involve patterns. Both cooking and chemistry involve transformation. These connections are interesting but rarely actionable because they don't reveal transferable mechanisms. Deeper connections involve shared structures or processes that operate similarly across different domains. The feedback loops that govern ecosystem stability also govern organizational health. The principles that create visual harmony in art also create narrative flow in writing. The mechanisms that drive viral spread in epidemiology also drive viral spread in marketing. The deepest connections involve what cognitive scientists call isomorphisms, identical structures that appear in different contexts. The branching patterns of rivers, blood vessels, and lightning strikes follow the same mathematical principles. The network effects that create monopolies in technology markets operate similarly to the network effects that create dominance in social hierarchies. When you can identify these deeper structural connections, you can transfer insights, techniques, and solutions across domains in ways that create genuine competitive advantage. You're not just borrowing surface features. You're applying proven mechanisms to new contexts. The lattice construction method. Building systematic connections requires more than casual observation. It requires deliberate architecture. The most effective approach is what might be called lattice construction, creating a visual map of your skills and systematically identifying the bridges between them. Start by listing your 10 most developed skills or areas of knowledge. These might include technical abilities, creative practices, analytical frameworks, or domain expertise. Don't limit yourself to professional skills. Include hobbies, interests, and areas where you have substantial experience, even if they're not directly career-related. Create a grid with your skills on both axes, forming a 10 by 10 matrix. Each cell represents a potential connection between two skills. Your task is to identify the shared subskills, principles, or mechanisms that link each pair. What does writing have in common with programming? Both involve logical structure, iterative refinement, and debugging processes. What connects photography with project management? Both require timing, resource allocation, and quality control. This exercise reveals connection opportunities that aren't obvious when you think about your skills in isolation. You might discover that your experience with music composition has given you insights about narrative structure that could improve your business presentations. Your background in sports might have taught you principles about team dynamics that could enhance your management approach. The goal isn't to fill every cell. It's to identify the highest leverage bridges that could create the most value if developed systematically. Circle 3 to 5 connections that seem particularly promising, either because they link your strongest skills or because they suggest novel applications you haven't explored. Analogical flight patterns. Once you've identified promising connections, the next step is learning to extract and transfer mechanisms rather than just surface features. This requires what might be called analogical flight, the ability to abstract principles from one domain and apply them productively in another. The key is focusing on cause and effect relationships rather than superficial similarities. When Antoni Gaudí studied natural forms for architectural inspiration, he wasn't just copying the appearance of trees and bones. He was understanding the structural principles that made them strong, efficient, and beautiful. His Sagrada Familia Cathedral uses the branching logic of trees to distribute weight, the spiral patterns of shells to create acoustic properties, and the cellular structures of bones to maximize strength while minimizing material. This mechanism-focused approach prevents what might be called cargo cult analogies, connections that copy style without understanding substance. Many attempts at biomimicry fail because they replicate the form without understanding the function. Many cross-industry innovations fail because they transfer tactics without understanding strategy. To avoid these traps, always ask, what actually transfers? If you're applying principles from music to business strategy, what specific mechanisms create harmony in music that could create alignment in organizations? If you're using sports metaphors for team management, what particular aspects of athletic training could improve professional development? Test your analogies through small experiments rather than grand implementations. Build quick prototypes that isolate the mechanism you're trying to transfer. If the principle works at small scale, you can expand it. If it doesn't, you can modify your understanding without major consequences. The Renaissance triad filter. Not all connections are worth pursuing. Some are intellectually interesting but practically useless. Others are practically valuable but aesthetically unsatisfying. Still others are both useful and beautiful but economically unviable. The most powerful hybrid work passes what might be called the Renaissance triad. It's useful, beautiful, and viable. Useful means the connection solves a real problem or creates genuine value. It's not just clever, it's helpful. Beautiful means the connection feels elegant and satisfying. It's not just functional, it's inspiring. Viable means the connection can be implemented and sustained. It's not just theoretical, it's practical. This three-part filter prevents several common connection failures. Academic connections often score high on beauty, but low on utility or viability. Commercial connections often score high on viability, but low on beauty or genuine utility. Artistic connections often score high on beauty, but low on utility or viability. The most transformative hybrid work scores high on all three dimensions. Jobs' typography innovation was useful. It made computers more accessible. Beautiful, it created visual delight. And viable, it became a sustainable competitive advantage. Gaudí's architectural innovations were useful. They created functional spaces. Beautiful, they inspired wonder. and viable, they could be built and maintained. Apply this filter ruthlessly to your connection experiments. If a hybrid approach can't pass all three tests, either modify it until it can or abandon it in favor of more promising directions. This discipline prevents you from pursuing connections that are intellectually satisfying but practically worthless. Cross-modal translation practice. One of the most powerful ways to strengthen connections is through regular cross-modal translation, converting information from one format or medium to another. This practice reveals hidden structures while building cognitive bridges that make future connections easier to spot and develop. Try converting a data visualization into a musical composition. What would the rhythm, melody, and harmony be if your quarterly sales figures were a song? This isn't just a creative exercise. It forces you to think about patterns, relationships, and emotional impact in ways that pure numerical analysis might miss. Transform a written argument into a physical structure. If your strategic plan were a building, what would its architecture look like? Where would the foundation be? What would provide structural support? Where might there be weak points or design flaws? This spatial thinking often reveals logical gaps that linear writing obscures. Convert a process diagram into a dance or movement sequence. How would your customer journey look if it were choreographed? Where would the movements be smooth and flowing? Where would they be awkward or jerky? This embodied perspective can highlight friction points that abstract process maps miss. These translation exercises aren't just metaphorical, they're methodological. Each conversion forces you to extract the essential structure from one domain and rebuild it in another. This extraction and reconstruction process strengthens your ability to see patterns across different contexts and transfer insights between seemingly unrelated fields. The bridge-building discipline. Connections don't develop automatically. They require deliberate practice and systematic development. The most effective approach is regular bridge-building exercises that force you to apply insights from one domain to challenges in another. Set aside 30 minutes each week for bridge drills. Choose one skill from your lattice and one current challenge from a different domain. Your task is to identify 3 specific ways the skill could inform your approach to the challenge. If you're facing a communication problem and you have experience with music, how might principles of rhythm, harmony, and improvisation improve your presentation style? The key is producing tangible artifacts that demonstrate the connection. Don't just think about how music principles might apply to communication. Create a brief presentation that actually uses those principles. Don't just theorize about how design thinking might improve your planning process. Design and test a new planning template that incorporates visual and iterative elements. Document both successes and failures. When a bridge works, capture what made it effective so you can apply similar approaches to other connections. When a bridge fails, analyze why it didn't transfer so you can avoid similar mistakes in the future. This learning log becomes a valuable resource for future connection attempts. Share your bridge experiments with others, especially people who have expertise in the domains you're connecting. Their feedback can help you refine your understanding of what transfers and what doesn't. It can also attract collaborators who are interested in similar cross-domain explorations. The signature emergence process. As you develop multiple connections systematically, something remarkable begins to happen. Your unique signature starts to emerge. This isn't a brand you create deliberately. It's a natural result of your particular combination of skills, interests, and connection patterns. Your signature becomes visible in the types of problems you're drawn to, the solutions you generate, and the way you approach challenges. People begin to recognize your distinctive blend and seek you out specifically for that combination. You're no longer competing with specialists in individual domains. You're creating your own category where you have no direct competition. Brian May exemplifies this signature emergence. His background in astrophysics didn't make him a better guitarist in any obvious way, but it gave him a distinctive approach to sound, precision, and systematic experimentation that became central to Queen's musical identity. His scientific training influenced how he thought about harmony, how he approached recording technology, and how he structured compositions. The result was a sound that no purely musical training could have produced. Keep a signature folder where you collect your best hybrid work. Look for repeating patterns, themes, and approaches that appear across different projects. These patterns reveal your emerging signature, the distinctive way you connect ideas and solve problems. Name your approach once it becomes clear. This isn't about marketing, it's about clarity. When you can articulate your distinctive method, you can apply it more systematically and communicate it more effectively to others. You can also attract opportunities that specifically need your particular blend of capabilities. The network effect amplifier. Individual connections are valuable, but connected connections create exponential value. As your lattice develops, you begin to see higher-order patterns that link multiple domains simultaneously. These multi-way connections often produce the most transformative insights and opportunities. Your growing reputation for synthesis attracts others who are working at similar intersections. You begin to collaborate with people who bring complementary connection capabilities. These collaborations often produce hybrid work that none of the participants could have created individually. The network effects compound over time. Each successful connection makes future connections easier to spot and develop. Each hybrid project attracts new opportunities for similar work. Each collaboration expands your network of potential partners for future synthesis projects. Your connection practice also makes you more valuable to organizations and teams that are trying to break out of siloed thinking. You become the person who can translate between departments, spot opportunities that others miss, and generate solutions that integrate multiple perspectives. The compound advantage. After several months of systematic Connessione practice, you'll notice that your thinking has fundamentally changed. Instead of seeing separate, unrelated domains, you see a connected landscape where insights from any field can potentially inform challenges in any other field. Instead of feeling limited by your current expertise, you feel energized by the possibility of applying your knowledge in novel ways. Your learning accelerates because new information automatically connects to your existing knowledge network. Your creativity increases because you have more diverse raw materials to combine in novel ways. Your problem-solving improves because you can draw on a wider range of proven solutions and adapt them to new contexts. Perhaps most importantly, you develop what might be called synthesis confidence, the deep belief that you can create value by connecting ideas that others see as separate. This confidence allows you to tackle challenges that pure specialists might avoid because they seem to require knowledge from multiple domains. But even the most sophisticated individual synthesis has limits. The ultimate expression of Da Vincian thinking emerges when all 7 principles work together in a coordinated system that compounds their individual effects. The final chapter reveals how to orchestrate this integration, though the specific framework for maintaining momentum might surprise you with its elegant simplicity. Chapter 9, Mastery Momentum. Leonardo da Vinci died with over 13,000 pages of notes, not random jottings or stream of consciousness rambling, but a systematic record of investigations that spanned anatomy, engineering, painting, architecture, mathematics, and natural philosophy. His notebooks weren't just storage devices, they were thinking machines that amplified his intelligence and preserved his discoveries for future use. 500 years later, those notebooks remain one of humanity's most valuable intellectual assets. They reveal not just what Leonardo thought, but how he thought. They show us a mind that transformed scattered curiosity into systematic genius through deliberate practice and structured exploration. You now possess the same system. The 7 principles you've learned aren't just productivity techniques, they're the operating system that powered one of history's greatest minds. More importantly, they're the foundation for your own transformation from scattered, multi-passionate creator into systematic polymath. The flywheel effect. The real power of the Da Vinci system emerges when all 7 principles work together in a coordinated cycle. Curiosità selects the questions worth your life. Dimostrazione converts those questions into evidence you can trust. Sensazione upgrades the quality of information feeding your investigations. Sfumato preserves options while timing decisions perfectly. Arte Scienza models the mechanisms that drive results. Corporalità sustains the energy and focus needed for deep work. Connessione multiplies your capabilities by linking insights across domains. Each principle feeds the others in a self-reinforcing loop. Better questions lead to better experiments. Better experiments generate better observations. Better observations reveal better patterns. Better patterns inform better models. Better models enable better decisions. Better decisions create better outcomes. Better outcomes attract better opportunities. This isn't linear progress, it's exponential growth. Each cycle through the system makes the next cycle more effective. Your questions become sharper because you've learned what types of inquiries yield actionable insights. Your experiments become more efficient because you've developed better intuition about what's worth testing. Your observations become more precise because you've trained your perceptual abilities systematically. The flywheel effect explains why some people seem to accelerate their learning and impact over time while others plateau despite working just as hard. It's not about talent or luck, it's about systems that compound versus systems that don't. The legacy codex architecture. Your notebooks are becoming something unprecedented in your life, a searchable extension of your intelligence. Every experiment you log, every observation you capture, every model you sketch becomes part of a growing knowledge base that makes you smarter over time. This isn't just about having good notes, it's about creating what might be called a legacy codex, a body of personal research that becomes more valuable with each edition. Your consistent use of headers, tags, and cross-references transforms scattered thoughts into connected insights. Your discipline in documenting both successes and failures creates a learning trail that prevents repeated mistakes. Your habit of sketching mechanisms and testing predictions builds a collection of proven models you can apply to new challenges. The compound effect is remarkable. After 6 months of systematic practice, you'll find yourself referencing insights from earlier investigations. After a year, you'll discover patterns across different domains that weren't visible when you were working on individual projects. After 2 years, you'll have a personal knowledge base that gives you genuine competitive advantage in any field you choose to explore. Your codex becomes a thinking partner that remembers what you've learned, suggests connections you might miss, and preserves insights that would otherwise fade from memory. It's not just a record of your thinking, it's an amplifier of your thinking. The rhythm of excellence. The Da Vinci system isn't about heroic bursts of effort. It's about sustainable rhythms that make excellence feel effortless. Your daily 10-minute observation drills build perceptual skills without overwhelming your schedule. Your weekly planning sessions ensure your efforts align with your priorities. Your monthly hybrid shifts create visible progress while preventing perfectionist paralysis. This rhythm creates what psychologists call implementation intention, the automatic execution of beneficial behaviors without conscious decision-making. You don't have to negotiate with yourself about whether to do your observation drill. It's simply what you do after your first work block. You don't have to debate whether to run your Friday decision window. It's built into your weekly architecture. The rhythm also creates accountability without external pressure. Your monthly ship date ensures you finish projects rather than endlessly refining them. Your weekly reviews ensure you learn from both successes and failures. Your daily practices ensure you make consistent progress even when motivation fluctuates. Most importantly, the rhythm makes your development visible to others. People begin to notice your consistent output, your systematic approach to problems, and your ability to generate insights that others miss. Your reputation shifts from talented but scattered to systematic and reliable. Opportunities begin seeking you out rather than requiring you to chase them. The agency transformation. Perhaps the most profound change you'll experience is a shift from reactive to proactive thinking. Instead of being buffeted by circumstances, you begin to shape them. Instead of being overwhelmed by complexity, you begin to navigate it systematically. Instead of feeling scattered across too many interests, you begin to see how those interests can reinforce each other. This transformation happens gradually, then suddenly. You start noticing that you're less anxious about uncertain situations because you have tools for exploring them systematically. You realize you're making better decisions because you're working with better information and clearer models. You discover you're having more interesting conversations because you're asking better questions and making unexpected connections. The agency extends beyond your professional work into every aspect of your life. Your relationships improve because you're more present and predictable. Your learning accelerates because you have systematic methods for acquiring and applying new knowledge. Your creative work becomes more distinctive because you're drawing on a wider range of influences and connecting them in novel ways. You stop feeling like a victim of your own scattered interests and start feeling like the architect of a unique and valuable capability set. Your breadth becomes a strength rather than a weakness because you've learned to structure it systematically. The relationship revolution. The Da Vincian system doesn't just change how you work, it changes how you relate to others. Your predictable rhythms make you easier to collaborate with because people know when you're available and when you're focused. Your systematic approach to problems makes you a more valuable team member because you bring structure to chaos rather than adding to it. Your visual thinking tools, mechanism maps, contrast grids, perspective stacks, become communication accelerators that help teams align faster and make better decisions together. Instead of endless debates about opinions, you create frameworks that make trade-offs visible and criteria explicit. Your habit of documenting and sharing your thinking process makes you a better teacher and mentor. You can show others not just what you've learned, but how you learned it. Your codex becomes a resource that others can learn from, creating opportunities for collaboration and knowledge exchange. Perhaps most importantly, your commitment to evidence over opinion makes you a more trustworthy partner. People know that your recommendations are based on systematic investigation rather than gut feelings or wishful thinking. Your reputation for intellectual honesty attracts others who value rigorous thinking and systematic exploration. The acceleration principle. The most surprising aspect of the Da Vincian system is how it makes difficult things easier over time. What initially requires conscious effort eventually becomes automatic. What initially feels slow eventually becomes fast. What initially seems complex eventually becomes simple. This acceleration happens because you're building transferable skills rather than domain-specific knowledge. Your ability to ask good questions works in any field. Your experimental thinking applies to any challenge. Your perceptual training enhances any type of observation. Your connection-making ability creates value in any context. Each new domain you explore benefits from all your previous learning. Your ramp-up time decreases because you have proven methods for acquiring new knowledge. Your mistake rate drops because you have models that prevent common errors. Your insight generation increases because you have more diverse raw materials to combine in novel ways. The acceleration also creates what economists call increasing returns. The more you use the system, the more valuable it becomes. Your codex grows richer with each investigation. Your connection lattice becomes denser with each bridge you build. Your reputation for systematic thinking attracts better opportunities and more interesting collaborators. The Leonardo legacy. Leonardo's notebooks reveal a mind that refused to accept the boundaries between disciplines. He studied water flow to improve his paintings and inform his engineering projects. He dissected cadavers to understand anatomy and improve his sculptures. He observed birds to design flying machines and enhance his understanding of natural systems. This wasn't dilettantism, it was systematic synthesis. Leonardo understood that the deepest insights often emerge at the intersections between fields, and that the most powerful solutions combine knowledge from multiple domains. His legacy isn't just his individual masterpieces, but his demonstration that structured curiosity can transform breadth into breakthrough. You now have the same tools Leonardo used, the same systematic approach to questioning, experimenting, observing, deciding, modeling, making, and connecting, the same methods for turning scattered interests into focused investigations, the same framework for building knowledge that compounds over time. The difference is that you live in an era with unprecedented access to information, tools, and collaborators. You can test ideas faster, share insights more widely, and connect with experts more easily than Leonardo ever could. You can build on his foundation to create something uniquely your own. Your first move. The journey from scattered to systematic begins with a single step. Choose one question from your Curiosità practice, the one that scores highest on leverage, feasibility, and resonance. Write a one-line hypothesis about what you think might be true. Sketch the mechanism you think connects cause to effect using 5 boxes and labeled arrows. Now, run a 48-hour test. Design the smallest possible experiment that could provide evidence about your hypothesis. Execute it quickly and document the results using your standard headers. Hypothesis, setup, learn, next. Take one photo that captures either your process or your results. Write one paragraph describing what you discovered and share it publicly along with your photo. This might be a social media post, an email to colleagues, or a blog entry. The format matters less than the act of making your thinking visible and inviting feedback. This single cycle, question, hypothesis, test, document, share, is the foundation of everything that follows. It's how Leonardo worked. It's how every systematic thinker works. It's how you'll work from now on. The calendar commitment. Excellence isn't an event, it's a rhythm. Block out 3 recurring appointments that will anchor your Da Vinci practice. Schedule 10 minutes daily for observation drills, linking each drill to one of your top 3 questions. Schedule 30 minutes weekly for planning and review, ensuring your efforts align with your priorities. Schedule 2 hours monthly for creating and shipping a hybrid artifact that demonstrates your growing synthesis capabilities. These aren't suggestions, they're commitments. Put them on your calendar with the same priority you'd give to important meetings. Treat them as non-negotiable appointments with your future self. Your consistency in keeping these commitments will determine whether you transform your scattered interests into systematic mastery or remain trapped in the randomness that limits most multi-passionate people. The calendar commitment also creates accountability. When others see your consistent output and systematic progress, they begin to take your work more seriously. When you see your own consistent progress, you begin to trust your ability to tackle increasingly ambitious challenges. The finisher's advantage. In a world full of starters, finishers have enormous advantage. Most people begin projects with enthusiasm, but abandon them when initial excitement fades. Most people generate interesting ideas, but never test them systematically. Most people recognize valuable connections, but never develop them into actionable insights. You're about to become different. You're about to join the rare group of people who start small, finish fast, and repeat consistently. Your commitment to shipping monthly hybrids will build a visible portfolio of completed work. Your discipline in documenting experiments will create a searchable record of what you've learned. Your practice of systematic connection making will generate insights that others miss. This finishing advantage compounds rapidly. Each completed project makes the next one easier because you've developed better judgment about what's worth pursuing and what's worth abandoning. Each documented experiment makes future experiments more efficient because you're building on proven methods rather than starting from scratch. Each systematic connection makes future connections more obvious because you're developing pattern recognition across domains. Your reputation will shift from someone who has interesting ideas to someone who turns interesting ideas into valuable results. This shift opens doors that remain closed to pure ideators and creates opportunities that reward systematic execution over random inspiration. The moment of choice You stand at a crossroads that will determine the trajectory of your next decade. Down one path lies the familiar pattern of scattered interests, unfinished projects, and unrealized potential. Down the other lies the systematic development of your unique combination of capabilities into something genuinely valuable and distinctive. The choice isn't between your interests. It's between random exploration and systematic investigation. It's between consuming other people's insights and generating your own. It's between hoping for breakthrough and creating the conditions that make breakthrough inevitable. Leonardo chose systematic investigation. He chose to document his thinking, test his hypotheses, and build on his discoveries. He chose to connect insights across domains and create hybrid solutions that no single discipline could achieve. He chose to finish what he started and share what he learned. That choice transformed a curious young man into history's most celebrated polymath. It turned scattered interests into systematic genius. It created a legacy that continues to inspire and instruct 5 centuries later. The same choice is available to you. The same tools are in your hands. The same principles are at your disposal. The same transformation is possible. Your future reputation is being built this hour. Your legacy is being written with today's choices. Your breakthrough is waiting on the other side of systematic practice. Start small, finish fast, repeat. The world needs what only you can create.